Hello, Professor Rushby. I'm very glad to meet you and interview you. I know you are the editor-in-chief of British Journal of Educational Technology. Could you tell us a bit about yourself?
A bit about me. Well, I've been working in the field of learning technology. I tend to use the word learning technology rather than educational technology for about 42 years now, ever since I did my postgraduate work in artificial intelligence for computer-assisted learning systems. And since then I've worked often with one leg in industry and one leg in academia, in the universities and the education system, on many different aspects of educational technology. I've edited various books and various other publications, and I've been editing the British Journal of Educational Technology now for 20 years, which is a very long time.
Please tell us about the scope of British Journal of Educational Technology and what you hope to achieve during your tenure as editor-in-chief.
What do I hope to achieve? Let me start off with that. 20 years is a long time to be editing a journal, and it does look actually as I'm going to be editing it for another year or two yet. The British Journal of Educational Technology, first of all, the name is a little misleading. It says the British Journal of Educational Technology. In fact, it's very international. Last year I think we published papers from over 50 different countries, including papers from China and other places in Southeast Asia. Only about, I think about 7% of the papers submitted actually come from Britain. Others come from North America, from China, as I've said, elsewhere in Europe, all over. Secondly, it's the British Journal of Educational Technology. As I've already said, I prefer learning technology because educational technology to some people means just schools and universities, not vocational education or the kind of training that happens in industry. Unfortunately, we don't get very many papers from that area, but we do get some, and we like to publish those as well. So it's all of learning. It's published 6 times each year. We have about 4 general issues each year and 2 special issues each year. And I suppose in total we publish about 80 or 90 papers in a year. They're all peer-reviewed, and most papers will be reviewed by at least 2 or 3, sometimes more, independent reviewers. We have quite a large reviewer panel. And incidentally, if anybody is interested in being included in that reviewer panel, please get in touch with me. And papers will go through typically 2 or 3 cycles of revision before there is a final decision, which we would hope will be acceptance.
And please, can you give an introduction to British Journal of Educational Technology regarding journal impact factor, readership, time span from paper submission to first decision, author service and board member, etc.?
Right, those are the questions that everybody always wants to know. It is an SSCI indexed journal, and for various technical reasons, this year our impact factor has fallen. It's due to the way in which Thomson Reuters calculate the impact factor. This year they made a change and our impact factor has gone down to a little bit over 1.3. It's going to go up again because as this change works through the 3-year cycle of the impact factor, and I would expect that in 2 or 3 years' time we'll be well above an impact factor of 2. In terms of the decision process, the decision cycle, well, We get about 600 submissions a year. About half of those are rejected on first reading. Sometimes because they are not within the scope of the journal. For a common problem is that some authors think that we're a journal about computing science, and we're not. We're about education, we're about learning. So papers which are outside the scope of the journal will get rejected. Some papers may get rejected because they're too long, and we don't see any way of making them any shorter. And some papers are rejected because they don't tell us anything new. A research journal like BJET is seeking to push forward the boundaries of what it is that we know. And so a paper which takes us no further forward, doesn't contain anything novel, will probably be rejected. Sometimes we have to reject papers because of plagiarism. Every paper, every submission to BJET is checked very carefully for plagiarism using Authenticate and cross-check. And just sometimes we get papers where when we look at the analysis from that system, we find that either the author has reused a large amount of work that has already been published, or worse, has used material from other authors and has passed it off as their own. And those papers are immediately rejected. So that leaves us about, let's say, 300. And those papers are reviewed, as I've said before, by 2 or 3 people. It takes us about, on average, and I have to say this is on average, about 30 to 40 days to come to a first decision. So the time between an author submitting a paper and getting the first either rejected, very, very rarely accepted on the first time round, or maybe revisions, will take 30 to 40 days. Just at the moment, it's going to take longer because I'm not in my office. I'm here in Beijing, and it takes a little longer for me to work through papers here. As I said, there are often several revisions, and it may take the author some time to carry out that work to produce a version which answers the reviewer's comments and criticisms. But on average, again, maybe 2 months or 3 months before we get a final decision as to whether the paper is accepted or rejected. Then the process is quite quick, because the journal has an online library site, and accepted papers will appear there quite quickly as soon as they've been typeset. The proofs have been carefully checked by me and by the author. Then they'll appear on what's known as early view. It may take a lot longer before they're assembled into a printed version of the journal. But these days, of course, that's less important. Very few people read the printed version of the journal. Most of our, 60,000 readers, it's an estimate, but about 60,000 readers, we think, will access the journal online, and they'll see those papers early.
And how do you look at the papers submitted from China? What would you comment in terms of quantity and quality?
Quantity and quality. Well, quantity first. Not enough. Not enough papers from China. There's a lot of very important work, I think, going on in educational technology in China, and we don't read enough about it. And the reason why is that we don't get enough papers from China. So this is to encourage Chinese authors who are working on what they think are interesting problems to write those papers up and submit to BJET. Quality. The question here, I think, is that papers from China are different. Just to give an example, a paper from North America might very well be reporting on empirical research. There'll be a lot of numbers, there'll be a lot of statistics, there will be some statistical results. In my experience, authors in China are much more descriptive. The papers are much more qualitative. And I think that's important. It's giving readers in other countries, scholars in other countries, an insight into what is going on in China.
So what would you say to Chinese author who is considering submitting their paper to British Journal of Educational Technology? What is your expectation to Chinese author?
Well, I think the best person to answer that would be Professor Liu Meifeng. I should explain that we have a corresponding editor for China, because China is very important to us. So, can you describe your role?
Okay. Hi. I'm the corresponding editor for BJET in China. So also my work, according to my understanding, is to promote more Chinese paper to be published in BJET, right? And just now Nick mentioned all about the review process. I think after all the reviewers' comments come back, so all the Chinese paper will come to me. So the authors could talk to me before that or after that. So I would like to welcome all the Chinese authors to subscribe to BJET and also to contribute to it.
The last question. You are currently in Beijing to attend the seminar in Peking University and Beijing Normal University. Could you tell about this?
Yes. I think that authors, whether they're in China or whether they're in the UK, any other country, authors don't really know enough about what happens in the publication process. They think it's a very simple process. They write a paper, they submit it to a journal, somehow or other there is some magic, and the journal decides, the editor decides whether to publish it or not. It goes into the journal and other people can read it. And they see it as this very simple process. In fact, it's not a simple process. There are a lot of things which happen in between. The publisher is an intermediary between the author and their reader, but a very important intermediary who is adding value to that process, making the paper of higher quality through careful checking and copy editing, proofreading, and then making it discoverable. If you, as an author, if you write something and you just throw it out on the web, some people may find it, but a lot of people won't. And part of the publisher's important task is to make your paper, the author's paper, discoverable by other scholars who are interested in that particular subject. And this is being confused now by the move towards open access and also towards open data. And these are two aspects of publishing which, again, authors aren't very clear about. They don't fully understand it. So the aim of the seminars, and it's essentially the same seminar in both universities, is to try and explain some of these things so that authors can understand better, can work better with the system, and can ensure that their work gets to as wide an audience as possible.
Thank you for your time, Professor Rushby.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure to be here in Beijing.